Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. As you know, we've been recording stories from family caregivers who describe what it's like to navigate the 17 caregiving systems. And I'm thrilled to have Michele join us today. She's going to share her experiences. So welcome, Michele. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your caregiving situation.
Sure. I am a full-time unpaid caregiver for my older sister. She's 14 years older than I am. I am about 10 years into this journey, and she suffered a stroke in 2013 that left her paralyzed on her left side. Fortunately, she still has cognitive ability and speech. She does have a little bit of brain injury in terms of memory loss and a couple cognitive things. But we had to really learn how to live together. I was not living here in Rochester, New York is where I am now and where we're from. I was actually living in Chicago at the time that this happened. So it was unexpected. She was only 56 at the time that it happened. And there was, neither one of us are married. We're single. We're career women, and there was no other option really in my perspective to help her. It was me coming home and helping her. And that's kind of where we leave it today. It was several weeks in the hospital and a decade now of navigating the caregiving systems for sure.
Okay, so you just gave me a great segue. So we know that there's 17 systems. I wonder if there's systems that you feel like you navigate, manage, and advocate within the most.
Sure. I would say in the beginning of my caregiving journey, it's kind of all over the place. As you know, you start with healthcare and medical and health insurance and what are we going to do and how are we going to set up the house and those types of things. And 10 years later, as I've trudged through those and really started to figure that out, along with my sister Marie, who is the carrie again, I definitely work on every day is relationship and family. That just comes into play every day. We also have an older sister who lives with us who's retired. So it's navigating their relationship with each other. And then our relationship as siblings and me as the little sister who is now taken over as the mom, if you will, to some extent. And then there's still healthcare just about every day. There is financial very often. One of the things that I think about a lot now being a full-time caregiver versus when I first started, I was trying to balance work and caregiving. I had a good career. I had a stressful career. I traveled. I had to give that up. One thing had to go, So workplace was obviously definitely part of it. And then I would say technology is really a big part of it today. That is her way of communicating with her friends. And it's my way of just about everything these days, like everybody else. And the healthcare system is so focused on getting people to use technology more than calling the doctor and getting a person on the phone. And so that is actually a big thing that happens throughout the times when I'm shuffling, trying to schedule her appointments and getting information about her prescriptions and equipment, et cetera.
Yeah, I was keeping track as you were telling me the different systems, and I'm up to about 9.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, I know. Right. You don't realize it until someone starts counting for you.
Right.
Yes. And what's interesting is you talked about how you adjusted your home or your sister's home to accommodate the caregiving experience. And I think people overlook that our home becomes our workplace for caregiving.
Yes.
So workplace is about caregiving, but it's also our career. And it's interesting that you felt an impact from both angles, setting up the house, but then saying, I've got to interrupt my career because I just can't do both.
Right. Anybody who can do both to me is superhuman, quite frankly.
Yes. Okay, so tell us a situation where you felt like you had to navigate multiple systems in order for you to manage the situation effectively.
Sure. This actually just happened this past December. My sister's on a variety of medications for different things, for seizures, for pain, for spasticity. It's just on and on and on and on. So that is a big thing that I manage daily, making sure she has everything the time she needs to have it. And we just so happen to need one of her prescriptions refilled. And it was OxyContin. And obviously, because it's so regulated and it's a narcotic, she called her pharmacy and they said, sorry, we can't refill this. You've got to get a hold of your doctor to refill it. So that falls on me because I'm usually the one that gets a hold of the doctor. After probably 5 minutes waiting on the phone to try to get somebody, I said, forget it. I'm going to just get online. The hospital system has a thing called My Chart. Hopefully that's not giving away what the hospital system is, but it's a place called My Chart where all of your information, all of the patient's information is listed and all their tests, results. It's how the nursing staff and the receptionists and the doctor communicate with the patient, or for me, the caregiver. So I ended up sending a quick note online saying, hey, can you please refill this? I got a call back not too long after that request saying, well, we're sorry, her new doctor. I said, new doctor? She doesn't have a new doctor. They said, yes, she does, because the old doctor just left the practice. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, who's the new doctor? And can you ask him or her to refill this prescription? And I'm talking, she had a day left of this stuff. It wasn't like, oh, she's got 2 weeks. And they said, well, she's going to have to come in and see the new doctor. Now, my sister's in a wheelchair and it's December in Western New York. And after some negotiation, I was able to get them to have a nurse practitioner get in touch with me that day with my sister on a teleconference call. Again, technology being part of it, which this is the good part of technology. I didn't have to bring her in right away. And we had the call with the nurse practitioner. The nurse practitioner had no idea who she was. The nurse practitioner was new. And I had to explain the last 10 years of my sister's healthcare journey to her before she even could try to refill the prescription. After having that conversation, she said, I'm sorry, but you're still going to have to come in and see the doctor because I can't prescribe a narcotic. I said, okay. And she said, so you have to call back and schedule an appointment with the doctor. I didn't want to do that, of course, but I said, okay. Called back to get an appointment. And they said, oh, he's not scheduling appointments with new patients until January, mid-January. And I said, I'm sorry, but we got to figure something out here because she is 2 days, 1 day away from needing this refilled. And there's no way she can wait 6 weeks. And so they got me in, thankfully. And it just so happened that morning was wet snow and a little bit of wind. And when we got to the doctor's office, they hadn't plowed the parking lot yet. Now, fortunately, it wasn't a ton of snow, but it was just enough to make that a challenge. And I got her out of the car very carefully because it always scares me in the winter because she could fall. You know, I have to help her out of the car and into the wheelchair. And so I very carefully did that, pushed her through that snow in a wheelchair. And even the doctor's office only has a tiny little door with the automatic handicap thing that opens up. And then you go into a little tiny little lobby area and then you have to turn and do it again. And it overwhelms me how many services, especially healthcare services, don't have handicap accessible things. And so barring that, we get to the doctor. They send in their student doctor, who is a resident first, who only looked at his laptop the whole time, didn't even look up to ask my sister anything. And finally, the new doctor comes in, and I have to start all over again with why we're there. And then I have to defend the reasons why she was put on oxycodone. And aside from that, the doctor was doing the best he could. Aside from that, I learned that there was some new legislation that just passed January 1st in New York State, or I'm sorry, not January 1st. It was that fall. And it passed by our governor that said, now you have to have additional paperwork signed for any narcotic that you're prescribing. So it wasn't just, I'm going to just prescribe this and you're going to move on. It was, give us a few minutes. Here's 4 pieces of paper that you now have to fill out and sign before we can even prescribe this for you. So that was another layer. Again, I guess you could call that the legal layer. And that was to protect the doctors, of course, and the patient, but predominantly it's protect the doctors from malpractice in case they give it to somebody and something happens. You know, they overdose or something. And that was that was just quite a conversation. And then even at that, the doctor wouldn't give me the OxyContin. He only prescribed morphine. And I thought, morphine? I mean, to me, morphine was always, I had parents in hospice. Morphine was something extremely different. She tried the morphine, didn't like it, had to go through that whole process again with the doctor, explaining why the morphine didn't work, why she needed to, can you just give her the stuff that helped her? She's been on it for 10 years. She's not an addict. You know, she took it when she needed it. And she can't really get out of bed. So she is in a lot of pain. A lot of times we get her out of bed as much as she can stand. But that was my experience. And then going to the pharmacist, getting scared because they told me I had to have I can't remember what they call it, but whatever the drug is, or the needle injection for overdoses. So I had to have that on hand too. And I thought, what do you mean? I don't need to have that on hand. And what do I do with that? And that just kind of threw both of us off for a few days until, you know, the dust settled and we figured out how to manage this new doctor, this slightly newer medication. And that was just this past December. And as you know, Denise, there's hundreds of examples of that I can tell you, but that's the most recent that I can really recall being a struggle.
So it's one prescription that needs to be refilled that your sister has been prescribed for years.
Yes.
When I counted 11 systems: provider, medical, healthcare, community. And when you started talking about going to the doctor's office, I put down community because I know what it's like to go into a building, even when it's a doctor's office. The
Right.
buildings are not good. It's hard.
It is.
And then when you said December, I wrote down climate because the weather is going to impact your ability to have a smooth trip.
Absolutely.
And then you talked about technology. And then I added nervous system because you have this window. It's hours.
I forgot about the nervous part. Yeah.
Right. You have hours to get something filled that you know your sister needs. So of course it's going to impact both of yours nervous systems. And then I wrote down narcissism, and I wrote that down when the student doctor came in and only looked at his laptop and didn't look at you. Now, that might not be narcissism, but it just seemed to reflect that the system is all about protecting itself.
Correct.
It's all about what do we do with our system, but not really what do we do with our patient and their family caregiver. So there was no empathy for you at any point. None.
Very little anywhere I go. Yeah.
None. No empathy. And then payer, thinking about the insurance company paying for the prescription and what you need to do to get the payer also involved. And then legal, you talked about legal. Then I wrote down relationship, because not only is it the relationship between you and your sister, but now you have to form this new relationship with a new doctor.
Mhm.
You know what the other piece of the narcissism is? No one alerted you that there was a new doctor. No one ever thought, oh my gosh, we've got patients that depend on a doctor for orders and refills and just care. But we're not going to alert them when there's a change.
Right. And the new doctor isn't going to take the time to look at your chart before he or she walks into the room.
Oh, I can't even tell you how irritating it is to me, how many times we repeat the same story. And it's not just repeating the same story once or twice a year. You repeated the same story how many times within a window of a few hours?
Mhm.
The nurse practitioner, the new doctor, the resident, at least 3
pharmacist,
times.
yeah.
The pharmacist, at least
Mhm.
4 times within a period of just a few hours.
Mhm.
Oh, it's so aggravating. And here
It
you
is.
are using the technology that the system has in place, my chart.
Correct.
Right, which you would think, okay, this is great. I don't have to repeat the story because the medical history is part of the electronic health record, but no.
Yes. And
They
God
also-
forbid you go to a different, there's 2 main hospital systems here. God forbid you go to a different hospital system with a different type of doctor. You got to start the whole thing all over again.
Yes.
And it's just so frustrating. I mean, she's already dealing with so much in her life, and now we have to defend why they need help. And that
Yeah.
really bothers me. I'm like, we're defending her need for healthcare.
Yeah.
We're defending her need for pain medicine.
Yeah.
And this is just, we're heading towards a big storm and I actually think we're in the middle of a perfect storm
Yes.
right now.
It's a catastrophe.
It really is.
It's a catastrophe.
And I want to fix it. I know I can't fix it myself, but I am very, very passionate about figuring out where the holes are and
Yes.
how we help people like you and I. We've had careers, we had to step out. There's nothing that really supports that right now in place in our country that supports the need to do that.
Yes.
And it's very challenging and something that I really want to dig into and fix, at least in my own community, try to start there.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the impact on your nervous system. I wonder if you could share 3 emotions that you typically feel when you're in the midst of this horrible system navigation.
Oh yeah, easily. Frustration, aggravation, anger.
Yeah.
And I thought about this a little bit too, helplessness. And I can't control any of this and I can't fix it on my own. So helplessness is big.
And you're within a system that's not helping you, which I think
Correct.
is just demoralizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I talk to people a lot that have the same types of situations and they're going through the same things.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what helps you cope?
Well, pandemic era, a little bit too much wine helped me cope, but that was not very, very good. That was something I needed to get in check, and I have. But honestly, I do have some ability to step away from the house once in a while. I have a tremendous network of friends. Even though we don't live in the same city, we are very close. We've been close since we were teenagers, and we're very there. We very often are there for each other. If I didn't have them, I think I probably would have broken at some point, for sure. So they are my support system. We talk several times a month, if not every week. And again, just the ability to get outside for 10 minutes and breathe in some fresh air, that helps me. Just to be able to go meet a friend for coffee and talk through some things, or cousins or other relatives, that really helps. I would love to be able to go on a vacation for 3 or 4 days and not have to think about anything, but it's just really difficult to even manage making that happen.
Yeah, I don't think people understand
Mhm.
the intensity of trying to put in place your backup so you can take a little bit of a break.
Right,
It's really difficult. I think just thinking about it can just exhaust you.
right,
And,
right.
and then you think, okay, I'm going to do all this. I'm going to put everything in place. I'm going to go away for a couple days, but I don't know that it's going to actually stay in place.
Mhm.
We want to be able to trust. And the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about as we've been doing these interviews is how hard it is to trust the systems. And yet we have
Yeah,
to go in with a level of trust. Otherwise, I think we would just stop. We would just stop.
right.
And it's hard to keep trusting when the doctor leaves without giving you warning. I mean, that is just like horrifying to me. And that the nurse practitioner makes you have this virtual visit only to tell you, oh, I can't prescribe that medication. What was the point of this?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the hardest part is, as you mentioned, the relationship with the doctor and the healthcare staff. You have to come from it from a very calm place because,
Yes.
as my mother used to say, you get more flies with honey. You
Yes.
really screaming at them and flipping
Yes.
out doesn't
Yes.
put you any further into the process. So that I haven't ever been a person that flips out over things, but I have noticed that skill of being calm has helped me through some of this process, because you have to put yourself in their shoes as well, because most of the people you're talking to every day, they have no control over the system they're in either.
Right.
They're just doing their job.
Right. They're implementing a process that they know makes no sense.
Exactly. Exactly.
One of the things that we also talk about are the caregiving fatigues. So I think of compassion fatigue. It's really this umbrella term, and we have to get specific about what's wearing us out. And
Mhm.
grace fatigue is something that we experience. We're gracious within a system, knowing that we have to be gracious within the system in order to keep moving through the system.
Exactly.
We don't want to be the one that puts the red brick wall up in front of us just because we had impatient moments and we just kind of lost our cool. So we just feel this pressure to always be gracious. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. I appreciate your help. And I do. It's a sincere comment, but you do have to feel like you do have to say it a lot.
Yes, right. Okay, so here's my last question for you.
Okay.
So after a really tough experience navigating the systems, what would you love to do or have that would help you?
There's a couple things, if I may. One, I'd like the access to private in-home care, kind of like when you were a kid and you had a babysitter. I would love to be able to have a bench, a deeper bench, if you will, where I can just call somebody and say, hey, my friend just asked me to go to a concert next week. Can you come for 3 hours or 4 hours? And I'll pay you. I'm not asking for free service, but I want it to be something that is affordable as well. Because we have tons of resources, I think, out there as far as in-home care and all that, but it's costly. And there's only two ends of the spectrum, in my opinion, based on my research, that are helped. You either have to be really, really wealthy, or you have to be very, very poor. That's been my experience. People who have worked their whole lives, done the right things, been good to people, taken care of their families, there's nothing out there in terms of affordability. And that's what I would like to see someday, is let's have this be an affordable, and stop throwing the word affordable in front of it until it is actually affordable. I've had those experiences. Let me call. We have several of those agencies. Let me call and see how much it would, if we just private pay, how much would it cost? I wanted to go away for 2 nights, and it was going to cost $500 each night, and they had to be there overnight. You couldn't just say, can you come for 4 hours? It had to be a full 8-hour shift. And I said, I'm going to spend $1,000 to go do something that only costs $300. So that's a lot. I think that's very important for those of us in this situation. And to that point, to have that go-to so that I can plan 4 or 5 days to get away and just not have to worry about anything, not have to be the one that gets up in the middle of the night, not have to be the one that has to prepare breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or think about preparing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and organizing a schedule. And when are my appointments? When are her appointments? What's the weather going to be like? Should we cancel that appointment because it's going to be snowing? Just the ability to just turn my brain off for a few days is what I would like the most. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be at a fancy hotel or anything like that. Just a place to not have to think about the caregiving responsibilities. That'd be wonderful. Be so refreshing.
Michele, this was fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. Hope I didn't ramble on too much.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. This was really helpful. This was really helpful. And I have a feeling this is the first of many times that we're going to connect.
I feel that way too. I'd like to connect for sure and help you guys along the journey. I've got some things I've got in my sights that I'm trying to accomplish that I would love to bounce off you, if that's okay at some point, once I kind of get something more concrete in place.
Yeah, that would be fabulous.
Thank you for doing all of this.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm sure it took a ton of work and experience, obviously, but just putting all the pieces together, I can only imagine. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, it's fun for me, which sounds so odd, but it's very motivating and energizing for me. I guess that's,
it really, yeah.
And I'm sure you can appreciate it. It just feels like it's my way of trying to make a difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were given this situation for a reason, right? Maybe that's the reason. We're supposed to bring us to another, time where we do support our elderly and our disabled a lot better than we have.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that because that is a perfect close. So for those of you who have watched us, thank you so much for watching. And we'd love to also record your story. So go to careyearsacademy.com and then you'll see a headline that says what it's like for you to navigate the systems. And then just read through and you get all the questions. So there's no surprises. And then you can schedule time with me. We have interns starting in the summer. They'll be available to record your story as well. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.